Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Glenn Gould Foundation's Promise of Music Forum and our session on music in prisons and detention centers. You may have heard of Glenn Gould, a famous Canadian pianist, but you might not know about our foundation. Glenn Gould used his talent and celebrity to reach people beyond the confines of the traditional classical artist of his time. A revolutionary, he bridged the human divide of the East-West Cold War barrier through his performances in the USSR. In the studio, he transformed the way music was recorded and explored the use of new electronic technologies, television and radio, to reach a larger audience with a message larger than music itself. Finally, he set the example of the power of music to impact lives. The Glenn Gould Foundation exists to extend Canadian and international awareness of Gould's spirit and legacy by celebrating innovation and excellence, promoting creativity, encouraging cultural diplomacy, and introducing programs that demonstrate the power of music and the arts to transform lives. We are so thrilled that you're joining us for the Promise of Music. On behalf of the Foundation, thank you for spending this next session with us. I'd like to introduce our distinguished panelists to the stage, and if we could kindly give a warm round of applause for A.K. Dion, who will be presenting a short presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to use this microphone or this one. I'll let the sound people figure that out. I'm A.K. Dion, and I'd like to thank Lucas Perron for inviting me to share some preliminary thoughts on research that I'm in the middle of conducting at U of T in my role as a doctoral candidate. So my dissertation research is a study entitled Doing Time Musically, and it's an exploration of facilitators' experience leading prison music programs. And just to contextualize this work a little bit, so I started out my career many years ago as a classroom choral music educator. And that seemed to be a logical progression from my childhood. The word on the street is that around the age of 4, I started playing the piano by ear. I was from a very musical family where our family's lives revolved around music and community service, and often the two were intertwined. I started formal music lessons on the piano at the age of 8, and so it seemed to be a natural progression to study music and become a music teacher. And so I was a choral music educator and a community choir conductor for about 10 years, during which time I completed a master's in music education and really got into music education as a means for children to express themselves making music and explore and affirm who they are in their musicking process. I'd like to say that my turn of the century project was to go to law school. Not necessarily a logical progression, but for me it was. I was curious about many things that I had read in the news. I had a cousin who was a lawyer, and I found his work quite fascinating. So it seemed to me that it would be logical that I would be the person that would do entertainment law and be the conduit between musicians, artists, and the business world. And about, as I like to say, 3 seconds into law school, I realized that what interested me about law was actually how people's stories interacted with our laws. And I realized that my interest really was with criminal law, human rights law, administrative law. And so I had a 17-year career as a lawyer, working predominantly in professional regulation. This is a picture of me coming out of court one day. Most of that time, as I said, I was in professional regulation, but I also did some criminal law work. And I became very frustrated quite quickly because it seemed to me that we were sending people to jail and I was seeing them in court 6 months later and nothing had changed. But I didn't know what to do about it. It took me a while to figure out that my place was to look at music in prisons. And so for the rest of my presentation this morning, I'm just going to talk about the research that I'm involved with, doing my doctoral work at U of T. I want to talk about a preliminary exploration of what I like to call a big idea. And I'm calling it a big idea because it really is an interaction of some themes that I'm seeing from my participants. And then I will talk very briefly about preliminary contributions. So my research question. What happened was when I would tell people that I was a lawyer and that I was interested in music in prisons, and particularly in going into prisons to do music and music education, many people would say to me, that's very interesting. And then I would say, and I've had a little bit of experience doing this. And then many people would become quite intrigued. And they would want to know what it was like. And I realized very quickly that my experience is tempered by and shaped by my experience as a lawyer and my views on the criminal legal system. And so I thought, well, I wonder how other people experience this work. So that became the focus of my research. When I looked at the literature, I realized there was a lot to be learned about that experience. Much of the prison music literature is actually focused on the experience of the participants, the incarcerated individuals. If I use the word participant in the rest of my talk, I'm speaking about incarcerated individuals who participate in these prison music programs. The people who were the subject of my study, I call facilitators. Also, just for clarification, when I talk about prison music programs, I'm talking about formalized programs in which a facilitator from the outside goes in on a regular basis and conducts collaborative music making, be it songwriting, singing, choir, composing, performing, rehearsing, those sorts of activities. So when I looked at the literature, I couldn't actually find a theoretical model for looking and exploring this type of experience. So I created one, and very quickly it's a 3-level model. And you'll see that the lines between each of the levels are dotted, and that's because they aren't solid and discrete categories. There's a lot of interaction. So at the larger level, or societal level, I rely on Andrews and Bonta's risk, need, responsivity model of penal rehabilitation. And I chose that because it's the predominant model both in Canada and pretty much in Anglo-American jurisdictions. At the intermediate level, I look at Sykes' pains of imprisonment, and those are the factors that drive social connections with people who are incarcerated. And then on a more personal level, I look at Notting's conceptualization of the ethic of care, and I deploy that to consider the facilitator experience. My study itself was an interpretive phenomenological analysis, which is a mouthful at this hour of the morning. You may remember that IPA is actually where people who have the experience talk about the experience to the researcher and also their interpretation or the significance of that research to them. I put out a call for facilitators to the International Music and Justice Network, and also sent some directed communications to facilitators here in Canada. I had an overwhelming response. I actually had to go back to the Research Ethics Board and increase the number of participants that I could invite. I ended up inviting 10 to participate, And I'm here to report on 7 at the moment. This is a work in progress, and my thoughts today are fairly preliminary, but I think significant to what I'm seeing. The data came from an initial 90-minute interview, 3 follow-up reflective journals from the subjects or facilitators, and then my own researcher journal, because IPA requires that as a researcher, I acknowledge my own subjectivity within the research process. And as I said earlier, as a former lawyer, I do bring some opinions on the criminal legal system. So the big idea that I'd like to explore with you is the whole idea of the interconnectivity between risk, safety, and vulnerability. And everything that I'm going to say is against a backdrop of the facilitators all making it acutely aware to me that they are incredibly aware of the power dynamic of their prison music work, and that the institution itself holds the ultimate power, and that their work is at the whim and the permission of the institution. And while the facilitators acknowledge that it's probably necessary, when they talk about institutional power, you can hear the resign and frustration and resignation in their voice. And they're frustrated because often the institutional processes and attitudes impede their work. Sometimes it cancels their work in the case of lockdowns and the participants can't actually come to the prison music program. Sometimes it has to do with the attitude of the prison official who's at the reception area, and they may try to slow down the facilitator's entry into the prison, thereby eating into their time with the participants. There's also things like the body counts that happen a minimum of 4 times a day when the participants actually must be back in their cells. These things all cut into the facilitators' work. The facilitators themselves are also aware that they hold a relatively large amount of power compared to the participants. And much of their efforts not only are about music making, but also about acknowledging that power that they hold, trying to share it with the participants, and transfer it to the participants. The facilitators all have reported to me that they have allies, and that these allies are absolutely crucial to their work. And they sometimes come from surprising places. So they have allies within the prison who actually either invite or grant them permission to come in. They have allies within the prison guards. One story that I heard from a facilitator was that for weeks, when they were rehearsing this singing group that they were leading, this particular guard would stand in the doorway and make faces at the sounds that the choir was making. And one rehearsal, this facilitator said to the person, "I'd like to bring in some outsiders to do a joint workshop and a presentation. Who do I talk to about that?" And this individual said, "Well, actually, that's me. I'm the program coordinator," or whatever the title was. And they said, "You know, this group has improved, and I can see their focus, I can see their enthusiasm, I can see the positive outcomes. So you need to talk to me, and I am inclined to allow these outsiders to come in on a very limited basis to work together with your participants." So allies come in surprising places. Another example is that the individuals who are incarcerated themselves also are allies. One of my favorite stories is about an individual who actually put her hand on one of the facilitator's arms, which physical contact is a big deal in prison, and said, "You're going to get this program canceled." And what had happened was the facilitator had brought in cans of root beer. And cans have metal tabs, and metal tabs potentially can be used as weapons. But the real allyship came from the next sentence, and it was along the lines of, but don't worry, I have your back. I will count every single tab and make sure they're accounted for. Also heard stories where female facilitators were taken aside by a male participant who said, you know, you need to be careful of another participant because of the fact that you're female, and because we're a male population, we don't get to see many females, so just watch yourself. So allies are crucial, and they come from many places. The other, so we have the institution that's preoccupied with risk and safety. We have the facilitators who acknowledge this issue, that there's a tension there. And then the other thing that I'm hearing from facilitators is the notion of vulnerability. And they are very aware of the vulnerability of the participants, and they spend much of their time trying to mitigate that. So they try to create a space in which it's safe to be vulnerable. They calculate the challenges and supports that they give the groups. They pull the plug if they're not ready to perform. One of my facilitators told me, I wait until I think that the group is ready and are going to be successful before I do things with them. I heard from another facilitator who runs a rap writing and recording program that he was on guard when he found out that one of the prison guards was trying to monetize the participants' work. So the awareness of vulnerability and where the affronts might come from is wide. The facilitators themselves also reported vulnerability. So many of these individuals are university faculty, or they work for a university, and they told me that they suddenly were very vulnerable with the notion of being learners themselves rather than being experts. The physical safety element was really quite far down their list of vulnerabilities. They acknowledged it, but they also were aware that the participants had been vetted. There was often a prison official in the room during the program. But the facilitators told me they felt vulnerable if they didn't have the music skills, if the participants wanted to sing, for example, pop music, but the facilitator was classically trained. They didn't have experience running community music programs. They told me they often felt vulnerable because the participants tend to be very direct in their feedback, and sometimes they delivered messages that were hard to hear. And then I think the last piece that I'd like to report on is, just checking my time. Do I have 2 minutes? Thank you. Is the notion of harm. And so the facilitators talked to me about harm and potential harm to the participants, and they also talked to me about the harms they experience. So the harms to the participants, so for example, in songwriting programs, the facilitators were very concerned about copyright and who retains the copyright and who might take advantage of the fact that the copyright holders are incarcerated. They told me about their decision not to publish research on their experience or on the participants' experience. They told me about witnessing music digging up long-held trauma. They also told me about participants gathering around those with trauma to offer support. And they also were concerned that the participants often reported things like, coming to the music program is an hour each week where I'm not incarcerated. And they wondered about the ramifications for the other hours of the week when they did feel incarcerated. The facilitators themselves sounded deeply wounded, frustrated, angry when participants were actually transferred without notice. They didn't get to say goodbye. There was no closure. In some cases, those participants were assistants to the program, and so suddenly the facilitator was left doing all of the admin work. They also talked about the distress of hearing distress and trauma in the participants. And they wondered if, in some ways, they were actually perpetuating the sort of police state that the penal rehabilitation sometimes perpetuates. So one of my participants said, you know, it's important to remember that they're not all sweetness and lace, and yet there are so many great connections that we do make and such wonderful music that's made that my experience is not simple, it's not simple time, it's not double time, speaking in musical terms, but rather it's a complex interaction of mixed emotions, mixed experiences that I still can't wait to get out of bed every week to experience. So I leave those thoughts with you, and thank you.
Yes. Thank you, A.K. Dion. So my name is Lucas Perron. I'm in charge of an international network of researchers called SIMM, standing for Social Impact of Music Making. And what we just heard is research, an example of a researcher doing research on music practice in detention centers, in prisons. Not only the practice, musical projects are developing in a series of countries, but also research. And so thank you for your presentation. And so I would like to now invite the members of our panel to also shortly present themselves, and so that we can come to some exchange, maybe on some of the ideas that you, AK, introduced to us, or other questions and comments. And but first, I want to give the floor to Mrs. Obam Sawin and Annalise, who because I want to give you the floor first because you have the most experience of us all, and so please tell us what you've been involved in working in prison settings.
From here, yes. Good morning, everyone. I was very curious to learn about this experience this morning. Personally, I am an indigenous person from the Wabanaki Nations, and it has always, for centuries, been part of our life and of our way of teaching is through singing and storytelling. Nothing has changed, although they've done everything to kill that in us, but we somehow always come back to it. And how I got involved in this was I was very much against a lot of educational teaching places because of the kinds of books they were using to teach children or young people about the history of this country, and it was full of lies. And these books mainly were written by the churches, and they became so strongly advanced that you just had to go through that, didn't matter which school you went to. When I realized that all my problems came from that, I decided somehow I would do everything to make changes. And in the early 60s, there wasn't one weekend that we came to without learning that a woman in a certain nation had been taken, raped by several men, killed, and you found pieces of her body in the water, sometimes in the river, in all these places. So it was very difficult to be a woman in those days, I think for all women in the country, but for us it was very serious. So to try and work, I learned many things when I was a child as part of our creation and as part of our teaching through singing in our language and through telling stories. And this is how you would learn your history of so many centuries, of so many different tribes. And our language, we were fighting to make sure that our language is not silenced, which this is what happened for many generations. So there came a time, I don't remember the exact date, but I was talking to this ethnologist, and we were on the sidewalk, and he said to me, Alanis, did you know that 68% of the prisoners are Native people? We're talking about the 60s now. And it's, they're poorly treated in court. So I start to go to court, different times, and learn. I would see sometimes a row of, one time I counted there was 15 men standing there with their little hat in their hands and looking down. And they had no parole, no word. The next thing, they name each one of them. It's guilty, guilty, guilty. So many days or months or years in jail. And no lawyer, no nothing. And it made me cry, and I was very disturbed. So I'm talking to this ethnologist, and he's the one that told me that 68% of the prisoners were our own people. So I said to him, it means my relatives are in jail. I want to go and see them. And it was very difficult in those days. This was unheard of. But I managed to get organized through him to be able to come to different prisons in this country and talk to prisoners and sing for them. And, you know, I could write a book just on that, because it was the first time that a person was coming in to entertain in prison. And just an unknown feeling. And it would take me a long time to tell you all these experiences, but I want to tell you something, that in our case, as an indigenous person, there was already all kinds of problems that you were going through, and to be who you are was very, very difficult. So the first prison that I went to was a maximum prison, and there was 500 men there. And I really worried. I thought I had to make sure I don't go there looking sexy or anything like this. So I put on a nun's dress. And when I say a nun's dress, all of you out there, you're thinking I look like a nun dressed in black. That was not the case. It was a nun's dress for the nuns who did the cleaning. And it was cotton, and it was a little line, white and gray, but it had big puffy sleeve. I thought it was a very nice cut. So I put that on, and I arrived with my big drum at that prison, and with this dress on. And, you know, I'll just make up hours because I don't remember at all, like what time I was supposed to be on and stuff like that. So I arrived, and the guards were in front, and they said, "Oh, Madame Obomsawin, I don't know." In those days, they called the prisoners the population. I don't know if anybody from the population is going to come. You know, we never had anybody coming in here to sing or, you know, do music or whatever. I said, "I don't mind." I said, "I understand, and let's say I'm allowed until 4. I'll stay until 4, and if nobody comes, I am not insulted. I understand, and there's no problem." So I don't know. Let's say I was supposed to be 3 o'clock on. 2 o'clock, 2:30, nobody. 2:45, nobody. And these guards kept apologizing to me. And then all of a sudden, 500 guys comes in, and I think it must have been a cement floor. It was very noisy. And they had all these folding chairs, and, you know, noisy to install them. Then the guard takes me to the front. All the guys are sitting down. It's an even floor, like first floor. And so I come to the front, and there was a table at the front and a microphone with a pole on this side of the table. And I'm supposed to be sitting on the other side of the table and talk to prisoners. I said, "You're out of your bloody mind. I can't see anybody. Like, I can only see just the line in front." So I take a chair. I get on the chair. I put a chair on the table. I get on the table, and I sit down. Now I can see everybody. So imagine what I must have looked like with my big drum, my nun's dress, and so there was 2 Quebecers at the front line, and I could see they were laughing at me. Their shoulders are going up and down. I must have been quite a riot just to watch. So I sing one song, and I said, "Well, you know, it's hard enough for me to come here and sing for you guys, and I got these 2 here who are killing themselves laughing at me while I'm singing. It's very, very difficult." I said, "I'm going to do another song, and we'll see." I do another song, and they're still laughing. But in the silence, I can't explain to you, like you could feel it. I thought, "Oh my God, they're going to beat them up." And so I stood up and I said, "You know, nobody has to fight for me. I fight for myself." And until finally, I do another song. By now, I'm teaching them words in my language, and they're singing with me, the whole gang. And it turns out to be so much fun and so beautiful in a way that when they said, "Okay, now you guys, you have to go back to your cell," and she has to leave. So I came down off my stage, and not one man went out without coming to touch my hand or kiss me on the cheek and keep saying thank you. And it was such a gift to me. It was, there was a period of they could ask questions, and that's also another action that happened was really incredible. And just the fact that I went there and talked to them as plainly as possible became a big reward to me. So I continue, and I did a tour in several prisons in Canada. And I also realized that a lot of our people were in there as prisoners, that not only did it bring them something more than hope, it's who they were, who they have, look at what they have in their life, where did they come from, why do you treat them like you do? And it became, whenever I was booked into a jail, I had a very big audience, so I'll just go this far. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Annalise. Really. because what you're telling us was the beginning of a long story. You worked on many times in prisons, and I would like to ask Steve Happy, coming from another world, another continent, Cameroon, and you also are active in prisons, but in a different way. Please tell us about it.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'm Steve Happy from Cameroon, Central Africa. I thank God to bring me into this journey. I'm the co-founder of J-Time Records. We say J-Time Records is a project of rehabilitation of formerly incarcerated artists and inmates. Yeah, I spent 2 years in jail, and I co-founded the project J-Time Records with Gianni Roach, who is an Italian lady, and she has this brilliant idea. When in 2018, she was working in jail in Douala, prison of New Bell, and she was crossing the court of the prison, and there was this group of guys freestyling, doing rap, and she has the brilliant idea of like creating a recording studio. And at that time, specifically, I was in jail, and that's how we decided to put our forces together and create this project.
And you were already working as a sound technician before.
Yeah, as a passion, like music producer and sound engineer, because I have a bachelor in logistics and international business management. That was I was doing back in days. And then I quit my job one morning and I decided to pursue my passion. And 2 years after that, I found myself wrongly convicted in the prison. And yeah, J-Time Records, I would like to say, yeah, the first time like I stepped in the recording studio was really the end of my prison time, like because 40 days, 40 nights, we was doing music, we were losing our mind, we wasn't even counting the time anymore, because when you are between the four walls, it's you against the time. It's really you against the time. You count like every second, every minute. So having this opportunity was like a chance for resistance to our time in prison. So.
And a recording studio in prison, that makes me think of Norwegian prisons, where we know that such facilities exist. How was it installed in the prison in Cameroon?
No, it's even the first ever permanent recording studio in Africa. Like, yeah, it was in New Bell, and then we expanded to Burkina Faso, and then we started a new project in Ivory Coast, Grand Bassin, but a prevention program there, like with the kids of underserved communities. And we are doing the same thing in Cameroon now. Yeah, basically, I would like to thank the prison administration because they allow us to do this project. Till right now, they don't even know why they allow us, but at the same time, right now, they are seeing the benefits of it, because now, like the prison central of Douala, New Bell, is an example in the world, like, yeah, of a system of change for incarcerated prisoners.
And so recordings also lead to concerts.
Yeah, recording leads to concerts. It leads even like to education, because like we teach the basics of computer science, music production, sound engineering, and we are working hands on hands with the choir. It's a Presbyterian church in jail. We are working with them on those who want to learn how to sing. We are working with them. We send like artists there, and we have dancers. It's a way, the prison central of Douala is a space for 1,000 maximum of individuals, but you have more than 5,000. And the little light behind it, like it's an occasion for the artists or the guys doing art there to showcase your talent to a lot of people too. That's how we are seeing things, because everywhere in the world, like the prison system is not good. But we are not really focusing on that. Like, what is the positive light we can take out of this dark world? So it's our way of maneuvering. We go in through the recording studio, we are finishing the track. As soon as the track is finished, you can test it with the crowd and see how the crowd react to that. So it's becoming this community and this circle in this world we are creating inside jails. We have concerts where you have the opportunity to perform in front of like thousands of people. So there are a couple guys in jail that are really big stars in jail. Like, it's a unique world, like going, I can say going on tour. We organize it each month. Like, they sell music too, MP3, so it's really an ecosystem now through the music and through the project.
Also, to work on a recording takes time, and that makes it also interesting in terms of what you build up together with the musicians in prison that are proposing music to be recorded. And can you tell us a little bit more also about what you're doing outside of prison with Jail Time Records?
Outside, we built a recording studio ready to host formerly incarcerated artists when they are outside, because prison is a difficult world. No one wants to get out and come back to prison just to record music for free. So we have this recording studio outside for the guys when they are going out. And at the same time, like, we're using it for the kids of underserved communities, because we are really giving more and more time into the prevention. Like, yeah, because Cameroon and Africa in general, Central Africa too, we have this big problem of drug addiction of the kids. It's a trend. You look cool doing drugs, so we are proposing another alternative to those kids through music. We set up this new project, Ça vient de la rue, straight from the street, where we set up a recording studio. We go around ghettos, market, popular places, and we set up the recording studio. We blast the music, and you have young guys gathering, open mic session, and that's the creation of like new music. And yeah, at the end of the day, like, it's a process of self-affirmation, positive affirmation for them. Like, they feel appreciated, and that's really leading to concerts. Because every year we made an effort to have several concerts during the year, going to festival. And the last concert we did with the French Institute was really a big one, and like, it has a really big positive feedback, and a lot of ambassador was there. So it means a lot for them. Like, it's boosting a lot of confidence. They are feeling like they exist into the society, because you have to know, most of the inmates, particularly in Cameroon, from my observation, the young guys, they're always fatherless or motherless child. So they didn't have this parental figure into their life. So now feeling appreciated by ambassador, having a talk with them, having access to this world, they always feel like to be rejected by the society. Now they find themselves in the same room, like as maybe like the Minister of the Justice. It gives a lot of self-confidence in boosting them. So, and many of our guys, the guys we are working with, our friends, formerly incarcerated artists, robbers, no matter there was like big criminals, it's been now like more than 5 years they didn't return to jail. They was going like always in and out all the time. Basically they grew up in jail. But now with this new project and the music and God, we are seeing like the effect on them. They cherish the freedom more and more. They found a new purpose. they feel appreciated and less rejected by the society. A lot of them are even like, I can tell, popular now, like stars, people recognizing them in the street. We are going on tour this year, end of the year, we're gonna have the first show, and we are going to Europe, Berlin, I hope Canada too, like, so New York, so yeah.
It's quite an organization.
We can tell.
Accompanying from A to Z. Yeah. Congratulations and very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Bina John, please tell us what you were involved in.
Thank you. My name is Bina John. I'm an associate professor of music education at the University of Toronto. My research focus is on the psychosocial impact of music on justice-involved youth and children. And I'm currently the lead investigator for a project called From Custody to Community, where in collaboration with the Community Music Schools of Toronto, led by Dr. Richard Marcella, and the Wood Green Community Youth Centers. My initial foray into this research started 10 years ago when we did a pilot project with Richard and with what was called the Regent Park School of Music, where we brought youth into the Regent Park School of Music. We offered 90 minutes of music once a week. The youth were between the ages of 13 and 19. And then in the second year, we started going into the youth detention centers, which I really enjoyed, just seeing where they were staying. And then finally, in the third year, we finally got to a point that we were going to offer a diversion program where after youth has been charged, they have the option to stay at home as long as they agreed to take music lessons and take advantage of mental health supports. And that's when the provincial government cut our funding. So, 10 years, or 6 years later, I'm starting again. So I had time to think about what lessons I learned from the first project. And what I realized was, as teachers, we were deciding what we thought was best for the youth. So we offered them coaching on piano, guitar, percussion, voice, and we thought we were doing such a great job, but we were really doing what we thought was good. We were imposing our own ideas of what the youth needed, and I realized it was completely Western art tradition. So finally, we got, by third year again, we got it together, and we asked the youth, well, what do you want to learn? And almost 99% said, we want to do rap, we want to do hip hop, we want to write our own songs. And we started to do that. Secondly, even though there's been a lot of research on, especially post-pandemic, post-George Floyd, on the importance of well-being and mental health, I'm going to read from my notes, I have so much. Justice-involved youth are less likely to have those kind of supports for their well-being and sense of self. So I decided this time I was going to center the voices of the youth in my present study to explore, as Doxit Pross suggests, what matters most to the youth, rather than imposing our own ideas of what needs to be changed in present systems. For example, I asked a youth if they were the director of the Community Music Schools of Toronto, what would they do? And they were so shocked that I even asked that question, and out came, wonderful ideas of how we should run this program. In direct opposition to the Government of Canada Youth Criminal Justice Act that recommends diversion programs for youth that incorporates community-based alternatives, the well-being of youth today is compromised, which often leads to further incarceration. Justice-involved youth need immediate supports as soon as they are charged, drawing away from a justice system that inflicts harm towards a response that addresses their needs. The purpose of my present study is to identify possible connections between participation in music sessions and the subjective well-being of youth that may potentially inform the format and content of future sessions. I want to center the voices of youth by providing them with the opportunity to describe in their own words what their perceptions and feelings are. I'm curious, do they feel connected? Do they feel engaged? Do they feel happy? And these are core components of well-being, according to Martin Seligman's PERMA theory of well-being. If we truly want to understand what matters most to justice-involved youth, we need to take a philosophical approach that is rooted in childism, that celebrates children as active producers of self and provides the freedom for children to articulate their own hopes and dreams and aspirations. This approach directly challenges notions of passive and troubled youth that is prevalent today. And this kind of orientation only leads to further harm when we actively repress the ability of children to articulate their own sense of self. I find it fascinating that the themes that A.K. Dion is in the process of uncovering with her research with music facilitators, safety, trust, vulnerability, acts of care, and connections resonate with what we need when we prioritize and build a community with justice-involved youth. This is what community is all about, and this is how we build relationships. I believe this requires an actual overhaul of a malfunctioning justice system. In Canada, a shocking disproportion of justice-involved youth are Black, whose marginalized families are now living in socio-economic neighborhoods. There are 4 times more Black youth in Ontario youth facilities. And the trauma that is caused by such barriers negatively impact the well-being. To overcome these barriers, according to the Unequal Justice Report published by the John Howard Society, we need compassionate engagement and practice. Music has the power to develop central human capacities such as bodily health, imagination, emotional expression, affiliation, and play. Martha Nussbaum considers these capacities as parameters of justice that should be guaranteed for all children. A society is deemed unjust if it prevents even one child from developing these capacities that Nussbaum views as a birthright. So how do we contribute to rehabilitation? How do we safeguard a sense of self? What is our ethical duty? It is to work in community, to prioritize well-being above all else, and to provide spaces where youth can develop their own central human capacities, surrounded and protected by community. I think this is our work.
Thank you, Bina. So let's start to have some exchange of ideas. I would propose to start off with something that AK during her presentation already touched upon, is that for facilitators, musicians going into the world of the prison, it's not necessarily easy, and confronted with not only the prison context, but also being confronted with the lives that people lived before, lived there, and maybe will not be able to live beyond being there. So. And how they should, because going in and out of prison again, how they can deal with this. This is something which comes up a lot, yes. So maybe, I don't know, Annalise, you must have been very much. You said already when you gave your introduction, also confronted with this traumatic experiences that people have in prison, and when you come out, you don't leave these thoughts and feelings behind you. You take them with you to your home. And how did you manage to deal with that?
Well, excuse me. As time went on, I received a lot of mail from prisoners. Telling me their story and their feelings and all those things. And I did it for quite a while. I went to a lot of prisons. And I became so attached to... I'll just tell you one time, I was we're like this. The place was full of people. And they could ask questions. And some prisoners would ask me a question. And there was one of the native person there would turn to him and say, "Shut up, you. I don't want you to talk to her. She's native. I'm the only one that can talk to her." And it got to a point where it was very dangerous. So I said to him, I said, "Look, let them ask me whatever it is they wish to ask me, And I'm going to stay, once we're through, I'm going to stay another half hour just to be with you, and you can tell me, or he said, this guy, and he points at one of the bosses, I guess, he won't let you stay. So I turned to him and I said, tell him you will let me stay. And he wouldn't say it, but he went like this. I said, you see? He said, yes. So then he was quiet and other prisoners could speak to him. Then when he was finished, I said to that man, obviously he was in charge, and I said, tell me of a place where I can be alone with him. He said, are you crazy? This guy is a killer. He's killed somebody. And he went on and on. I said, look, that's not why I'm here for. I said, I want to be alone with him. I promise. That's what I'm not leaving until you find me a place. And we argue and argue, and finally, he gave me his office. And in his office, there was a desk, 2 chairs, not a piece of paper on top of the desk, nothing. So he goes out. He says, I'll stay by the door. I said, no, he doesn't want to see you. He wants to see me. So I moved the chair from behind the desk on the side with the other chair. I had not seen him standing, that man. If he wasn't 7 feet tall, he wasn't 2 inches. And he was so tall, I was just amazed. And he looked really good, too. So he comes in and I said, have a seat. And we're sitting side by side. We had 20 minutes or 25 minutes. So I'm talking the whole time. He doesn't say one word. And I'm saying, I know which community you come from, and I can bring messages for you, and no reaction. Finally, there's a bang on the door, and that man said, he's got to go back to his cell, and you have to leave this place. He stood up. He went, it was quite a walk to the door, goes to the door. He hasn't said one word all this time. And he turned around and he said to me, it is the first time in my life that somebody promised me something and they do it. And he left. And I cannot tell you, I was so touched by it. But it's just to tell you how you make a difference. Sometimes it's a look. Sometimes it's a word that makes a big difference, because in general, these people don't get any visitors of any kind, and they're being judged all the time, and it's as if they don't have a life. And I think just for that purpose, that is so gentle, and it's so beautiful, and it's so important in their lives. And what you can do, it's like, people say to me, what can I do to help? And we have a lot of people on the street. And so I say, when you see somebody on the street that is maybe lying down or whatever, instead of crossing the street, why don't you smile at that person and say good morning? It makes you having respect for life. That person has life. You've got to take this. It's sacred for all people. And people in jail, it's even more difficult for many reasons. Some of them are there, they shouldn't be there. Some of them are, and they should be. But how do you change? How do you, I think it's very simple to me. It's love. No hate around. Don't feed hate. Just kindness, and just smiling at somebody makes a difference. It's like when you come to music, you can imagine how strong that is. It's just so beautiful, and so many of them have a lot of talent. Are composing, they're writing, and it's to encourage that movement.
Did you manage to go regularly to certain prisons, so that you could maybe get to know some of the prisoners better?
I went to visit prisoners. I'm not going to name anybody, but one time, as there's a Q&A going, and this guy said, I wrote to the chief, he never answered me. I just want to tell you that when I come out of here, I'm going straight to him and I'm going to kill him. So I said, well, I think that this won't happen. And I said another thing, the chief is going to come and see you. He said, huh, and he made fun of me, you know? So then I went to that community later on, and I said to the chief, you have to come with me to this prison because there's so many people from different nations, and I stay 20 minutes, 25 minutes with each of them. And this person that looked at me, meaning, are you crazy? I'm a chief, I'm so busy, you know, I don't, I said, no, I gave your name, and they're investigating on you, which they do. You can't walk in there without them finding out who you are. So he decided to come with me. Now, this same man who said he was going to kill him, when he saw the chief coming into the room, I'm telling you, it was as if God came in. He was so happy. If the chief would have said, suck my toes, please, he would have done it. He was just his eyes, it turned as a different person. And the chief said, when you come out, I'm so sorry I didn't answer you. I'm going to find you a job. And the conversation is so beautiful. And it did happen. And it's all those kinds of things that people who are treated like that don't feel any confidence in themselves, period, and feel they're constantly being judged. And just smile, just having a little bit of kindness towards a prisoner, it means a lot.
Steve, would you want to react to some of these ideas?
Yeah. I'm not sure to say it better, but like, I just want to add a little bit water of what she was saying. I remember being in jail, and every time I had a visit, it was a special energy because people coming from outside, it represents freedom. So it always give you hope and to receive like the energy from the outside. Yeah.
What I also heard from musicians working in prison is that they can feel very uncomfortable about the fact that in a way through music projects they make life for some time, a little time, nicer within that context, and then they go out and the situation is back to where it was, and so that's also something difficult, and also musicians questioning their role in this, not being able to really adapt the situation of prison, and the fact that certain people are there, like you say, 68% of the population of being there, and so maybe AK, you can react to this because you touched upon this during your presentation already.
Yeah, certainly I have had reports of people really questioning their role and whether or not, as I said, they're perpetuating the idea of the good citizen and what is a good citizen, and the notions of that and the values, which are very much colonial, hierarchical, westernized, and they try to reconcile themselves with that and their notions of rehabilitation, really centering around what it means to be human, not what it just means to be a good citizen, but what it means to be a human being, and a human being who connects and is in relationship with others. And it is a real struggle. Also going back to something you raised earlier, which I think is tied in, how do people cope? Many people told me that they have a spouse that they do a debrief with. They told me they journal. Several facilitators have a spiritual practice that they rely on to help them process the negative aspects or the challenging aspects. And I think this whole piece about what am I doing there, why am I here, what am I perpetuating, is a big part of that overall piece of coping.
Do you want to react to this?
Oh, absolutely. Christopher Small says that to make music is to be human, and whenever we were in the room with the youth, everything was forgotten. They left, where they were staying, and just the spirit in which we were participating, just affirming each other's existence. Your basic appreciating each other, appreciating their talents. I mean, I don't think there's anything more powerful that we can do to affirm somebody's humanity than to engage through music. And I strongly feel, I'm going off topic, but why are we having 13-year-olds in detention centers? 13-year-old children should be at home. And why aren't we offering diversion programs? A very famous scholar in prisons, Mary Cohen, they're starting an abolitionist movement in the United States, and I think that's where we need to be heading. Sorry, I'm more focused on youth, but why do we have 13-year-olds in detention centers? I think that's unjust.
Another topic or question is when Steve, when I hear you talk about jail time records developing these projects inside prison, but also outside, and also allowing for continuing work with those who were in prison and who come out. This is really something that is concerning many people, is that it's one thing to be in prison, but it's quite another question of how you manage when you get out, and when you have the how do you say that, when you, it's a difficult brand to be able to make things work when you come out of prison, and so yeah, so what you're doing in that respect is really very precious, I think, and I would like to know of other examples of projects, music projects, who somehow start in prison, but also are capable of accompanying people who can't get out of prison, and through music or through other projects.
Yeah. Being released of prison, from my experience, I would like to talk about my experience first. From my experience, was a big time. I wasn't even able to cross the road properly, so just to let you all know how rehabilitation is a big word. Everything is new, you are not used to see a lot of kids or people playing, or trees even. So it goes from the mental even to being active too. So, but what we offer a lot small grants to the guys too, because it's important. It's so difficult to be an artist. Even you are not in jail, you've never been to jail or what. It's so difficult to be or to live through art. So we offer small grants so they can start a business, a little business. A lot of them are selling sandwich, though others people are selling goods in the markets, whatever they want. Some of them are barber. So we make sure they can be independent. Yeah, we really make sure. It's really important, because the reality of the outside, when you are in prison, everything is free. Like you don't pay your bill, you don't have any bills, you have nothing. But when you are outside, it's another challenge. It's another challenge. The reality hit you harder. Now you have bills to pay, nothing is free anymore, the food is not free, so you have to survive. It's another world. It's not a safe space too outside. So the most important thing is to bring them a little bit support, like small grants to start a business, be an entrepreneur. It's really important because it's not easy for them to apply for a job with the special tags they have, like ex-inmates. Or so we try to figure out what they can do. Yeah.
Yeah, an important aspect of your work is that you know through having worked on the recordings, you have been working for a certain period of time within prison, and so you know them, and you can also somehow you also accompany them if this is wished for afterwards.
Yeah, like you're working with the guys, and step by step you start in building this friendship, and it's become personal. Like you're dealing with everything, and especially in Africa, the family is big. Like his family problem is your problem, like his mother problem is your problem, so his split sister, his brother, his problem, so it's become a family. So and they are really open to yourself, and they tell you everything. So it's super personal, like the relation we have with the guys. That's true. We try to make it more professional too, but it's hard. It's hard into those conditions. Yeah. So
it would be wonderful if your work would be studied and researched upon. And as I told you before, the SIMM network is in many places in the world, but Black Africa is very absent, and it would be great if you could incite some people in your country to develop research on the work that you do.
Yeah, we love to have a lot of brothers at the university, like studying communication, and they love the project Daytime Records, and they will love to be part of that.
Any more ideas, questions, remarks?
I think what we do is we give hope, and I do have a story about it's all these individual people, right, that we encounter. And we had one, but we called him the ukulele boy because he fell in love with the ukulele. He was so good at it. So the community music schools made sure that when he was released, he had a ukulele, and then we gave him lessons after he was released. So it's that hope. So many youth would say, like, as soon as I get out, I'm going to play, I'm going to learn drums, I'm going to learn this, and it's the hope that we give them, that there's something beyond, the dreary existence that they're part of. But it's those individual stories, it's those individual children and people that we touch that just is so impactful. Changes their lives. Yeah.
Yes.
You want to say something about this?
I just love our people, and I just love children, and it's not just our children. I have love. If anybody feels they don't have love, think of me because I love you. I just don't, it's for all children. I can't stand anything that's happening against children. What is there for them to think of for the future? And I just feel very lucky in a lot of ways that I have been able to realize that and to go and perform all over this country for many years and meet children of all ages and adults, and there's a lot of good people here. And even when you say, oh, this is a killer, this is this and that, I really believe that every person in this world has something good about them, somewhere. And if you don't allow them to think about that, then you make them what you believe they are. So as long as you feel and you know that every person in this world has something good about themselves. Start there. Don't you hate anybody. There's no time. And just that alone changes our ways, and to be kind to each other and to love each other. And it's so easy, really.
Thank you. I would like to share an experience that I had in prison. It was near Lisbon in Portugal. As a singer, opera singer. Well, he's not an opera singer anymore because he's too busy doing other things. His name is Paulo Lamero, and with the support of the Gulbenkian Foundation in Lisbon, he started to work in a prison near Lisbon. And what I saw was a creation of an opera production in prison, which was entirely written based on the stories of the prisoners. And so new music, new text, and I saw the opera, the creation of it in the prison, in an hangar with an orchestra, the Gulbenkian Orchestra, and some singers, and on stage there were the prisoners who could be in the same room as the audience. There were others who were not allowed to be in close connection to the audience, but they were participating through an internet connection, and I was able to go see them afterwards to congratulate them. But it was an amazing production. And they worked also. It was amazing also, apart from the fact that what it was amazing as a project because it took them several years to develop it. So that makes really so much sense as seen as a social project, not only an artistic project. And what was also one of the amazing things was that during the performance there were family members who were in the audience who then suddenly came to the stage, and also as part of the opera production, two mothers who came and said a certain text to their son, and so it was emotionally quite impressive. And so Paulo Lamero, it's not his first production there. Years before, he went into this prison and he proposed to prisoners that he wanted to do opera. And the prisoners, they started to laugh, and they told him, well, opera, this is really not our world. And Paulo Lamero had the good idea to, he wanted to do Don Giovanni of Mozart. So to make a Don Giovanni version together with the prisoners. And he had a good idea to show them a film of Peter Sellers. I don't know whether you know the Peter Sellers version of Don Giovanni. And so they changed their minds, and so it was. I didn't see that opera. I just saw some clips on this production. What was amazing in that production is that also, and that I would like to touch upon this before we stop, the participation of guards, and in fact the Don Giovanni production, the Commendatore was played by the director of the prison. So well, anyway, so this was like an amazing example, I think, of for a series of reasons, because I think the main reason is that you don't create opera in a few days, in a few weeks, in a few months. It takes a lot of time. So it's a meaningful in any way, a meaningful collaboration that can take place. And but do you have experiences also of maybe well, Annalise, and also Steve, is to work also with people who are part of the prison system, and how they can also how music projects can also help to have a certain impact on the relationship between people who are in the position of guards and people who are in position of. So Annalise, you have ideas about this?
Oh yes, excuse me. Over the years, there's been a lot of changes from what I told you of my experience. There's been a lot of changes, and I dare say for the better. And that is, educational system has changed. All those terrible books are out of the teaching places. Thank God for that. We have a lot of our people who are writing books, who are making music, who are very clever people. They're teachers. We have doctors. We have judges. A new judge again last week. It's a different time, and I just don't want to just say in the complaint place, because I think Canada, in a lot of ways, I travel all over the world to sing or to do show films. I now have 65 films that are finished that are used all the time for teaching purposes, which to me was the most important thing in my life. And the opportunity for all people is there. For our people, we have, I don't know, there's 17 institutions that I know of in Canada. There are I do a lot of mentoring, and I tell young people, if ever, and I mean ever, there was a time where everything is possible, it's now, right now. Not only you were intimidated in going into some kind of institution, you know you were not welcome to begin with, it's changed. There's a place for our people that is created in all these institutions to express themselves. Doesn't matter which discipline you want to become, it's possible. And I'm 93 years old, and I am so happy that I lived this long to see the difference, because there is a very, very big difference. I'm not saying that everything is perfect, but it certainly has changed. And I love Canada. You know, there's many reasons why maybe I shouldn't have that great love, but I have it. And I think fundamentally people are capable and have kindness within themselves. And you have to make sure you make them see it, because often they forget about it. And I think in terms of the educational system, it is unbelievable how it has changed. When I was small, I was told my language is Satan's language all the time. Now they're teaching the language at the university level, in high school, locally. Our people are making sure that, if possible, if anybody wants to learn the language, they can learn it now and know their history. That's very important. And not only is it possible, but it's created a place in every community, in every different language. There's respect for it, whereas before we were spit on. I am old enough to see the difference, and I'm telling you, I am so thankful.
You sure are. Thank you. Steve, you wanted to react?
Yeah, I have a couple of things to say, but I would like to end on those beautiful words and wisdom. I don't want to spoil those. It's okay. Yeah. So yeah, and yeah, right now in Cameroon, it's even a fight between the prison administration and the inmates who is next to be the next star in prison. Even the prison, sometimes guardians, they want to be recorded. There are a couple of guardians who are musicians, even the head of the prison administration. They're doing concerts together. Some of them are playing or doing some activities of dance. They're organizing a lot of stuff, and they are working hands on hands. Yeah.
Thank you, all of you. So we have to finish the session now because there's another one coming up, and so thank you so much.
Thank you.